I grew up in a small, tight-knit village alongside my two siblings, where I was the middle child. The closeness of the community was both a blessing and a burden, as everyone knew each other's business. My father, a reserved man who poured his energy into his work, rarely expressed his feelings and is now contemplating retirement. My mother, in contrast, was warm and nurturing, fiercely upholding the traditional values instilled in her from her upbringing in a devout religious family. Though I love my parents dearly, I've always felt like I fell short of their expectations. Their apparent view of me as the family's letdown stung deeply. My older brother, on the other hand, was the shining star in their eyes. Now 40, he's settled with a quiet, reserved wife and two boisterous sons who thrive in rough sports. To say they're a handful would be an understatement. My brother seems to believe it's his responsibility to steer my life. He works as a car salesman at a nearby dealership, but his guidance often feels like he's treating me as a fixer-upper project, implying I should be grateful for his attention. He paints a picture of a perfect life, boasting about his athletic kids, his speedboat, and his off-road vehicles. His advice, however, often sounds like a showcase of his sprawling home, luxury cars, and what he calls his ideal wife. This leaves me feeling more isolated than ever. As a child, I was sensitive, prone to tears, and quick to make excuses when things went wrong. I wasn't the tough, athletic kid my family seemed to value. Instead, I was teased and left out of most activities, with my asthma adding to my sense of exclusion. Worse, my parents didn't see asthma as a serious condition. I've also struggled with depression for as long as I can recall, never fitting the mold of the kid who could sprint across a field or throw a perfect pass. My parents often compared me unfavorably to my older brother, pointing out how I lacked his smarts or charm. School was a struggle, and I graduated high school with a modest 2.5 GPA. After saving some money, I started college but dropped out in my sophomore year, sparking a family uproar. My younger sister, in contrast, was the family's darling. I don't know her well, as I left home when she was still a teenager. From what I've seen as an adult, she's not unkind, just a bit spoiled, and she often echoes the dismissive attitude my parents and brother have toward me, perhaps because it's easier than being the target herself. She married at 19, had a grand wedding, and now has 3 children. I feel a special connection with her middle child, who reminds me of myself, often teased and overlooked as the middle sibling. After leaving college, I embraced my introverted, geeky side. I worked at a comic book and gaming store in my town, a job I loved until it shut down over 7 years ago. My parents, however, still act as if I'm stuck in that retail job. The highlight of that time was meeting a fellow nerd with big dreams. Together, we launched an IT support company that grew successfully. When my partner decided to sell to a larger firm, I walked away with a mix of cash and stock options, a deal that paid off handsomely. I've since started side ventures and made savvy investments, amassing assets worth over $1 million. Now, I serve as the CTO of a promising new startup, though I live modestly in a cozy 2-bedroom home with secondhand furniture and drive a 15-year-old car. I'm single, juggling a busy career and regular therapy sessions to manage my depression, asthma, and struggles with alcohol, which my parents dismiss as purely psychological. Despite the challenges, I've built a fulfilling career, even if it's not what others expect. My parents insist I attend weekly Sunday dinners at their home across the state, a 90 to 120-minute drive each way that consumes much of my weekend. They seem to think that, as a single, troubled person, I have nothing better to do. These dinners are often grueling, filled with unsolicited advice on finding a spouse, starting a family, or becoming a real adult, or long discussions about my brother's latest big sale at the dealership. Skipping a dinner invites subtle hints that I'm ungrateful or freeloading. I often discuss with my therapist why I keep attending these draining gatherings. My family consistently downplays or misrepresents my achievements, with many back home still believing I work at the now-closed game store. My brother, seen as the charismatic, successful one, often mocked my retail past, making it hard to share the truth about my life and accomplishments. My passion for tech and gaming was dismissed as childish, and my attempts to discuss my expertise were overshadowed by my brother's interruptions, often spouting nonsense he passed off as knowledge. I stayed quiet, afraid to correct him or explain my work, fearing it wouldn't change their view of me. Everything shifted last month when my brother, suspecting I was floundering, hired a private investigator to dig into my life, likely planning an intervention with our parents. Instead, the investigator uncovered my financial success, my stable home, and other personal details. Ironically, as someone in cybersecurity, I traced the breach back to unauthorized attempts to access my credit report. The revelation forced me to confront my family's sudden shift in perception, a jarring change given our history of misunderstanding. Angered by the invasion of my privacy, I had the same agency investigate my brother's finances. The findings were shocking. He was living far beyond his means. With 3 mortgages, IRS back payments, a messy credit history, and a record of DWIs, public intoxication arrests, and domestic disturbance calls, plus a child protective services file. My parents, by contrast, lived frugally with no major surprises. I prepared to confront my family at the next dinner, expecting a showdown. The dinner, however, took an unexpected turn. My parents began treating me with an odd reverence, as if I were the new family star, which visibly rattled my brother. Midway through, he erupted, boasting about recent sales and a supposed promotion to salvage his image. I calmly congratulated him, but subtly mentioned his debts and legal troubles. The mood turned somber. My brother initially denied the findings, but I pointed out he'd recommended the agency by using it against me. It felt satisfying, if only briefly. My parents, shocked, scolded him, but the revelation that my brother had accessed my social security number for the investigation made the situation uglier. The dinner descended into chaos, with accusations flying and decades-old grievances resurfacing. My sister's husband, my brother's wife, and their 5 kids watched in stunned silence as our family unraveled. Typically, our dinners followed a predictable script. My sister shared updates, my brother and his wife bragged, my mom chatted, and my dad grumbled. This meltdown was unprecedented. I clashed with my dad and brother as years of buried tensions exploded. It was like a live soap opera, and though it confirmed my frustrations with my family, I felt no triumph, only guilt and sadness. I hadn't meant for my brother's kids to learn about his troubled past. When my brother lashed out, yelling that I should never have been born and blaming me for the family's woes, my parents tried to calm him, but never acknowledged their role in how they'd treated me over the years. It was both validating and heartbreaking. Then my parents accused me of neglecting a supposedly ill niece or nephew, a claim I knew nothing about. I pointed out their misconception that I still worked at the long-closed comic store, despite my repeated corrections. Their distortion of our family history to suit their narrative disgusted me. Overwhelmed, I left and drove home. Now I'm torn. I feel betrayed, knowing my family will likely pressure me for financial help now that they know my wealth, just as they've done with my brother. Yet I'm grateful for the basics they provided growing up: food, shelter, clothing. Navigating this mix of resentment, gratitude, and the need for boundaries feels like a maze, and I'll need my therapist's guidance to process it. My brother's verbal abuse, ignored by my parents, has left lasting scars. They never saw his cruelty as harmful, which makes it harder to maintain ties. I want to wish them well, but feel the need to distance myself permanently. I'm also thinking about the future. If I meet someone special, marry, and have kids, how will I handle my family? Explaining this dynamic to a partner with a close-knit family could be tough. How do I introduce a new family to one I've cut off? These questions weigh on me. Advice. Before update, your family didn't value you for who you are. They used you to boost their egos. Now that they know about your wealth, they'll likely want to exploit it. You're not defined by them. You've built an impressive life despite their mistreatment. Limit contact as much as you want. They're after your money, and you know it. Keep working with your therapist to move forward without their baggage. If possible, consider relocating for a fresh start. Explaining this to a future partner may be tricky, but you'll create your own family when the time comes. Action steps. Freeze your credit to prevent further breaches. If your brother used dealership resources to access your information, report it to the appropriate authorities. Consult a lawyer to protect your assets, as your parents are currently your default heirs. Find a trusted counselor to navigate the emotional fallout of distancing yourself. Update. Driving home after that chaotic dinner felt like escaping a war zone. The quiet night roads gave me space to think, and by the time I reached my driveway, I knew I had to stop attending those draining family dinners. Over the next 2 weeks, I focused on my work and mental health. My home, filled with comics and tech gadgets, became my haven. I increased my therapy sessions with Dr. Bennett, who helped me set boundaries that felt like fortifications, not barriers. As summer warmed, my thoughts turned to the future, particularly relationships. I started to believe I could meet someone incredible. Then, like a scene from a graphic novel, I met Ava at a tech conference. Her cybersecurity presentation was riveting, but her warmth and grounded nature drew me in. She understood my family's struggles and valued boundaries as much as love. Over pizza nights, we discussed how to handle introducing her to my chaotic family. We settled on brief, casual coffee meetups, low-stakes interactions to keep contact without getting sucked into the drama. The first few meetups were awkward. My parents were overly polite, as if afraid I'd vanish. My brother struggled to speak, clearly unsettled. My sister and her kids, especially her middle child, who reminds me of myself, were a welcome distraction. Ava won them over quickly. These short visits allowed me to stay connected without being overwhelmed, and over time, my family adjusted, perhaps realizing this was the only way to keep me in their lives. They began respecting my boundaries. With Ava, I started envisioning a future built on mutual respect. not guilt or obligation. One summer evening by the lake, we talked about living together, and I marveled at how far I'd come, from feeling like the family outcast to standing confidently in my own identity. I'm cautiously optimistic about what lies ahead, knowing challenges remain. I still attend the occasional Sunday dinner, but on my terms, sometimes with Ava. We address issues as they arise, striking a balance between harmony and self-protection. Current situation. I'm still learning to share my life online, so bear with me. Let me introduce the key players. I'm the narrator, navigating a messy separation from my soon-to-be ex-wife, Daisy. We have 2 kids, Peach, our daughter, and Mario, our son. The divorce is turning bitter, largely because Daisy embraced her bisexuality this year and wanted an open marriage, which I couldn't accept. The situation worsened when I discovered she'd slept with a close co-worker and friend, a betrayal that hit hard both at home and work, where I'm a police officer. I took time to reflect, and while Daisy initially tried to salvage our marriage, she grew resentful when I stood firm against an open relationship. She began telling Peach I was leaving because I didn't love them, framing me as the villain destroying our family. It broke my heart to see Peach confused and hurt. Daisy now lives at her mother's, and during the kids' visits, she and her new partner, AP, shower them with gifts and treats, seemingly to win them over and paint me as the bad guy. We clash on everything, dividing assets, financial support, and most painfully, custody of Peach and Mario. Daisy resists every compromise. Recently, she's been telling the kids things that cast me as the antagonist, like claiming I dislike AP, who they seem to adore. This is messing with their heads. A few weeks ago, I was working overtime on a major project, aiming for a promotion to homicide investigator. We agreed the kids would stay with Daisy during this period, visiting me on weekends. When I dropped off their bags, Mario, teary-eyed, asked if I was sending them away because I hated them, echoing Daisy's words. It gutted me. I held him close, reassuring him of my love, but the damage was clear. Last weekend's visit was tough. They were distant and barely spoke. Today, I picked them up again, and they seemed so sad. Peach is struggling most, caught between showing me love and Daisy's influence. I can't stand watching my daughter suffer. I'm questioning whether to push the divorce further to protect the kids or try to endure for their sake. I need to minimize the harm to them, but I'm unsure how. Comment. You must tell your divorce attorney about this immediately. Daisy's behavior is parental alienation, and a judge will likely order it stopped, though enforcement may be tricky. Act fast and document everything. Her actions will only worsen if you stay. Parental alienation helped my friend win custody when his ex acted similarly. Hire a lawyer, record Daisy's behavior, and consider medical care for the kids to address the emotional toll. If needed, report her to CPS for harming the kids. Don't let her actions go unchallenged.